Welcome to the Marketing Remix, presented by Red Door Interactive. I'm Reed Carr, CEO of Red Door Interactive. Our show is the senior level marketer's resource for navigating our ever-evolving landscape. In each episode, in about 20 minutes, experts from different marketing disciplines representing different buyer touchpoints tackle one important marketing topic. Then, what do you need to know, and how does it affect the buyer? We're here to talk about voice search and quick answers. Comscore recently estimated that 50% of all searches will be voice searches by 2020. As voice search continues to expand, brands will be faced with a genuine obstacle that affects many areas of search engine optimization. How should brands, more so us agencies, adapt their process to accommodate the changes precipitated by voice search? Here to talk with us about their various areas of expertise, we got John Faris, VP of Cross-Channel Marketing, and Ross Briggs, the Manager of SEO. John, tell us a little bit about your background and explain this thing called cross-channel.
Sure. So, background primarily in SEO going back almost 15 years now. And cross-channel was sort of born out of SEO to some degree at Red Door, just given that SEO impacts and is impacted by so many of the other channels, really started getting us thinking about things like social media marketing really early on. And, really that just kind of parlayed into paid media, email, search, social analytics, conversion rate optimization. So that's really what makes up our cross-channel marketing practice area now.
Half of that didn't even exist 15 years ago.
Exactly.
Social media, what? Message boards? Ross, what about you?
Yeah, so currently managing the SEO department at Red Door. Been in the agency world about 5 years, and before that coming from the small business world. As I think many people in the SEO kind of world do, first in a small business and trying just to learn how to promote that and gain some more visibility. Search engines seem like the best way to do that. And it's just been a long ride since there, kind of diving down rabbit holes and discovering what there is to find out and how we can make ourselves more visible there. And kind of jumped into the agency world about 5 years ago and haven't looked back.
Yeah, well, we're glad you're joining us here. It's interesting. So we're going to talk about voice search. I think first and foremost, I think a lot of consumers and certainly those listening here started using voice search before they really recognize that it's actually search in some respects. So they'll perform a search via voice, but it's changing the way search is happening on the other side. So Ross, quick question for you, just specifically. I mean, how do we optimize for voice search, and how's that different than the way we used to search?
Sure. So I think it's easy to kind of fall into the trap of saying nothing's going to change, right? People are still searching for topics. We're just changing the input method from a keyboard into interpreting their voice. And in the SEO world for a while, we've been talking about the concept of optimizing towards topics, not individual keywords. And so we might just think, okay, well, we can just keep doing what we've been doing and we'll find success there. I think that there is going to be a change in the way voice search does affect keywords and does affect people's concept of what it means to do a search. One easy way to look at that is just that the queries are going to become more conversational, both because you're removing the keyboard so people don't worry about how long they're typing for. But then point two is that I think consumers are growing more and more confident in Google's ability to understand what they mean by a query. They don't have to edit their thought pattern to become a search query, and they don't have to edit what came out on the keyboard, because whether it's a spelling error or a weird way of saying something, Google generally interprets what you mean well, and returns relevant queries for that. I think as marketers, and particularly as SEO people, we need to understand that those queries are going to be pushed more and more towards informal ways of talking about things, more specific questions around topics and things like that.
Yeah, it seemed like, if you were to read a lot of our searches out loud, it was before, it was like caveman talk.
Yep.
Car, blue, and now it's hey, where's this, whatever, how do I get a blue car or something to that effect?
Right.
It's interesting then is how is that then influencing, so consumers are doing searches that way and they're doing it from voice through Now I guess Siri, Alexa, Google, a lot of different mechanisms to do that. Do we need to do anything different for any one of those devices, Google, or we know many consumers are using many of them. Is there anything different between any of the voice search platforms?
So I think there's definitely some key differences, especially if you look at a voice platform that is for Amazon, for instance, is very e-commerce driven and very purchase oriented. And then you have your a phone-based voice search platform that has an attached screen to it, right? So therefore, the interface is going to be more pushed towards voice input, but that traditional text output that we're used to seeing. Finally, if we're in home and we see with Alexa is pushing a lot of skills and other connected devices to that, we're going to have a push more towards what can you do with it? What sort of actions can be taken as a result of interacting with this appliance?
Okay. So, John, you talk about cross-channel, and it has so many implications, search does, among social and all the other mechanisms there. How do brands need to evolve their approach to SEO, given now voice being the new thing? I mean, you've been through, you said 15 years of this perpetual evolution and how we adapt to new tactics and things like that. What do brands need to do differently now?
Yeah, well, what Ross alluded to around conversational queries really took hold around 2013. So up until then, it was pretty keyword focused, and people were talking about semantic relationships and those sorts of things, but it wasn't fully kind of baked into Google's algorithm at that stage. And so in 2013, Rank Brain came about through the Hummingbird update, and basically, just like you were saying, Reed, that took these really long conversational queries and boiled them down to what's the intent of that search. And then instead of trying to come up with a unique result for every 7, 8, 10 word query that Google was seeing, many of which were completely unique to, like, Google had never even seen those queries before. Right. They were having to match that very much up to pages that contain those keywords. And with Rank Brain, they really got to the stage where they could more match a query back to a shorter query that had an intent behind it. So even though we're speaking conversationally to Google now, really what they're serving up is results to simpler queries that match up to the intent. And so in order to optimize for that, you really need to focus less on keywords and more on the intent behind those queries and serving up the most relevant, comprehensive piece of content that answers the consumer's intent behind their query. So that's one major thing. And then I would say the other is not necessarily a lot different than how we approach SEO anyway, but a little bit more of a focus on it. And that is, what are the questions that people are asking that we can answer in a comprehensive way, and that we have as a brand, or the client's brand has the credibility and the authority to answer on a particular topic. Yeah. And so there's all sorts of data sources for that. A classic one Ross and I were talking about was the customer service call logs, or asking the salespeople what are the most common objections that you get, or the most common questions that you get about your product. That stuff traditionally has made its way into FAQs, and those FAQs really can be crucial to voice search, because primarily people are asking questions.
Yeah.
So when they're doing voice searches.
It was the first kind of genesis of voice search, so to speak, because they were asking someone physically, well, hey, what's going on with that?
So you could do text mining of your forums. You could even create a forum on your website now, even though that sounds old school, but just to gather that consumer speak, that natural language, conversational type of content that consumers tend to spit out when they're on a forum.
Yeah. So hopefully if our podcast listeners are driving, they need to write this down, but write it down later. I mean, the richness of anything that had traditionally been voice, so call logs and things like that. So now then, taking that into consideration, whose responsibility is that? I mean, where does SEO live? Because now you're talking, that's coming from customer service stuff. Where's SEO live right now in a cross-channel world?
You still need somebody to quarterback it, right? So it's like mobile has been. you don't really necessarily have a mobile department because mobile spans across everything from how you do your search engine optimization to your paid media to your website. So it doesn't necessarily need to just live in one place, but you need somebody quarterbacking that throughout the organization.
Well, I mean, I think it's observational in that regard, is to see these users grabbing Siri or something like that and see, well, geez, something needs to change because, if weren't keeping their eye on the ball, this is something that over the last handful of years, you said since 2013, this is where this kind of intent base has changed. So if they're quarterbacking it, maybe they weren't seeing this coming because they weren't in it day to day, but maybe on a consumer level, they could have.
Well, and
seen that.
There's voice SEO, which lives within SEO,
right.
I would say, but it's not just about Google, like you alluded to.
Yeah.
It's about Siri, it's about Alexa, and they have completely different focuses.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think Ross was talking a little bit about that, right? I mean, Alexa is pretty commerce oriented, right? Google is, I need to go, certainly Siri is like, hey, I got an iPhone right now. I mean, that's what we're at now. Obviously, they're bringing devices to market now that's going to be in the home. But, that's probably been more I'm out on the road compared to then a Google, which is Google Home and classic search, I guess, maybe. So to speak.
Yeah. And for instance, Siri isn't just about serving up a search result from Google. It's also about your App Store optimization. So if somebody searches a non-brand query looking for an app, you want your app to come up first. So it cuts outside of SEO.
Yeah.
I think anymore, it's hard for something, especially when you're working with a large brand or large organization, for any one thing to live entirely within SEO. And it does become sort of a case-by-case basis, and working with an organization to determine who is the gatekeeper to this piece of content or, this asset that we could, and who can help us make this into an indexable document that can be converted to text if it's a video, or can be converted into website content if it's currently an internal facing customer service log or something like that. So as an SEO department, we are pretty well versed, I think, and we touch content, we touch different parts of a company's business and help advise them how it can be best optimized for web search. And I think this is just one more component that's like that and fits into that.
So how do we influence search on the front end? We talk about intent. Can we create intent? Can we create searches happening from a brand standpoint?
Yeah. I mean, creating intent is all about branding for the most part, right? So if you want to create intent for somebody, the most simple form of it is creating intent for somebody to do a search on your brand plus whatever they're querying, right? And the same is true with Amazon and Alexa, Echo. You ultimately want people searching for your brand because otherwise, chances are Amazon's going to serve up some Amazon Basics product if they haven't purchased your product before on Amazon, or if they haven't asked specifically by it for name.
Yeah.
A lot of times, an Amazon product is going to be one of those two results that Alexa spits out when you do a voice search for a product.
And I think in thinking about that sort of demand creation, there's also sort of the angle you can take with Alexa. There's skills that a brand can train it on. So, for instance, Polycom currently, you can ask Alexa to start a meeting, and it'll actually create the Polycom meeting and initiates it.
Can you get it to end a meeting and on time, perhaps, or make sure there's an agenda for it?
That might be a miracle sometimes, but I'm sure they're working on it. Ring Central can read your voicemail, connected as an Alexa skill. And you can do the same thing, questions and answers and other things with Google Home and things like that. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the more interesting parts of all this, because I think we understand that you can do a search and you find something near you or something like that. But some of these other things, I mean, they're exploring stuff that's quite a bit different from a voice standpoint. And again, that Alexa, I think it has evolved beyond certainly the commerce part, just because of the skills that are out there. Now, on the other side of it, and I think what a lot of people are certainly concerned about with all of these devices sitting around on tables, and certainly those that are sitting here, is I know 63% of internet users worry about voice-enabled technology spying on them. So, I mean, are we going to eclipse and go the other way where people start turning that off, or what's keeping them leaving it on?
They probably should be concerned about that, to be honest. I think these companies are going to have to do a really good job of dispelling any of those concerns. So far, they really haven't. And you hear everything from, if you have Facebook open on your mobile device, that Facebook is listening to you. Your Alexa app, I was freaked out by the Echo Dot that I have, because it was doing this sort of howl.
Right. The ring. Yeah.
Where the ring just kind of lights up in blue and I found out it's just a notification is waiting for me, but It took some searching to figure that out. And in the meantime, I had unplugged the Echo.
Did you voice search to figure that out?
Didn't actually. So I think it's definitely an issue that these platforms are going to have to get out in front of to create trust. So they're going to have to put some policies in place. I think with the Echo, it maybe only stores like the last 40 seconds or something like that. But they haven't done a great job of messaging that. So as people become similar to retargeting and how people have started to get freaked out about that over time, and that's led to regulation in Europe primarily, but it could be on its way here as well. They're going to have to get out in front of it if they don't want to get regulated by the government.
Should marketers then kind of take a wait and see approach? Or do you think we should? I mean, I don't see necessarily a reason why they need to not immediately adapt to the world of voice search. But I mean, is there something like, it's not an incredibly big investment to change or nuanced change to what they're doing now?
Yeah, it's just a little bit more focus. And so I would say take all these assets that you're creating, and similar to how you have to think through mobile and SEO and the other channel implications, that you also start thinking about voice. And a new term has been coined, past user experience. Now there's VX, voice experience. So it's just another thing to start thinking about.
So now I get to use the acronym. Oh yeah, it's a VX situation.
Exactly.
We got a VX situation here. So, okay. So, but to get into brass tacks of that then is, I mean, how much percent more are going to have to add to your budget to allocate toward this kind of SEO, to VX, to voice search?
I think the other kind of silver lining to that aspect is a lot of the things that we've been talking about so far, right? Making your customer service call logs more indexable, more searchable. Those are going to be things that benefit a brand, whether or not voice search catches on as the next big thing. People are already becoming more conversational with their keyboard typed queries, just because the keyboard is becoming a bigger part of our life, and it's more comfortable for us to speak that way through our fingers.
Yep.
So I think looking at sort of the adoption curve, and also how quickly, especially Amazon, has been selling a lot of their voice-enabled products, we do see this as being a trend that is catching on pretty quickly and does seem to be picking up steam. But I think in the worst case scenario that this dies off as a fad, most of the actions taken are still going to benefit a brand with or without voice search.
So, I mean, stay tuned for a later episode on chatbots or something like that. All this stuff has value in other places. The intent aspect has it, the FAQs. I mean, we have an application to other places. So I don't know as if it's going to be an issue within, it's just a voice search thing. I mean, it has application elsewhere, which is why cross-channel exists, for example.
Yep. And Amazon, so similar to how you're probably optimizing for keyboard searches, relatively similar way as you will for voice searches on Google. On Amazon, you probably want to rank first or second in a non-brand query for your product category on Amazon too. Right. And that's really how you show up in voice search. There is some nuance there. I have heard that Amazon Choice, if you have that badge for being Amazon's Choice, that you have a much higher chance of getting listed in a voice search than even being the best seller.
Right.
So you get Amazon Choice by being a bestseller, having a lot of reviews, selling through Amazon, or having Amazon Prime enabled, and those sorts of things. Again, all things you probably want to do anyway. I think the one that goes outside of that probably is the Amazon Skills, because you have to dedicate some resources to that.
Right.
But at the same time, like you alluded to chatbots, it's something that you would need to do for a chat bot or a guided selling tool or something like that. So a little bit of extra effort there, but it could also be worth it to get out ahead and be that brand that people are asking for by name because you've gotten press about doing this and being first to market and that sort of thing.
You brought up the little part of what you said there is like, so we've heard, or something to that effect. And that's such an interesting part of search because, Google obscures how they present their search results. Amazon certainly does, so that it's not manipulated. I assume that's why it is. So it's not manipulated all the time. So, all of this is kind of trial and error to some degree. There's no perfect science to it all, is there?
No.
Easy answer. And that's why we have people like us figuring it out on a day-to-day basis, but also working on lots of different clients and seeing things on a day-to-day basis from different sides of things. So a lot of times when I do a search, you get one of those, that little box that kind of gives you a little preview or a quick answer. Obviously that's what it's called, quick answers, in a search box. So how do we get to be there? How does a brand get to be in one of those spots?
Sure. So it's funny, a lot of people who currently use voice search, one of the main feedbacks they give for voice search is that they'd like to get more direct answers to their question. So this is definitely something that consumers are interested in. And we can already see that Google is surfacing many of these answers through their voice-based search when a user asks the question. So really there's three main types of quick answer results that brands can sort of play in and get some of their content surfaced through. One is the most kind of straightforward. It's just a paragraph style. This is where Google takes a look at your page, scrapes some of the content within paragraph format, and then surfaces it as an answer to that question. There's a few ways that you can find a lot of these keywords that do have those as results. One feature is through a tool that we use called Bright Edge, and they actually have a keyword discovery tool that will tell you what SERP features are currently on that keyword. You can then sort of tailor your content on the page to better answer that question or more directly answer that question if they're pulling a paragraph style answer for that. The other big ones that they use are list styles. So this would be like a bulleted list of items on a page. And then finally table style. So that would be coded as an HTML table on the page, and Google's able to parse that and then pull some of the information in. One of the interesting things here is that through optimizing towards these quick answers, a lot of SEOs have found that Google isn't predetermining which content type best fits that answer. And often they're surfacing a paragraph answer for a question where a table would fit better. And a tactic that a lot of people have used successfully is to adapt what is currently an answer being answered with a paragraph style and then better answer that either through a list or through a table. And they're able to then gain that quick answer. That those quick answers are then used predominantly by the voice-based search platforms to quickly surface the result that's going to meet your need. And especially when it's read back to you through voice rather than you scanning a page, that top result is really the most impactful for users.
Yeah, and that's another example where it's kind of a trial and error. You got to experiment and figure that out. That's the value, or what somebody in SEO helping you out can do for you.
Absolutely, yeah. Figuring out that right content format, finding those opportunities for those keywords and things like that. So.
It's great. It's fascinating and it is transformational. It is a lot of things are happening on an ongoing basis, and voice search being one of the more interesting ones as of late, certainly driving commerce. So really appreciate you guys talking this through with our listeners. Ross, John, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to hanging out with you next time.
Thanks, Reed.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thanks for listening, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you like what you hear, and visit us at our website at reddoor.biz.